Do you even know? Do you even know what just happened?
I think I already know what you're going to say.
Okay, about 2 hours ago, to everyone listening, about 2 hours at the time that we are recording this, Taylor Swift got on her Instagram and pointed a joint engagement post with Travis Kelce. And
Yeah.
let me read the caption to everyone, even though, of course, by the time this episode airs, it's going to be a little less than a week old, right?
Yeah.
This information will be a few days old by the time you guys hear it, but I am absolutely certain that there is somebody on here that you are just hearing this breaking news from me 4 days later because you're not on Instagram. But here's the caption that she put on the picture. She wrote this: "Your English teacher and your gym teacher are getting married. She's getting married." And it's the caption heard around the world. So I have been listening to Taylor Swift songs since I always try to remember how old I was because it feels like I was in high school, but then I think maybe I was a freshman in college. It's somewhere around there that I was like burning little Taylor Swift CDs. It was illegal. I was like on Napster downloading these songs. I was obsessed with Taylor Swift, and I had to be like 18 years old, something like that. She shaped my young adulthood. I love her so much. And I don't know if I've ever asked you this, Haley. Are you a Swiftie?
Oh, yes, of course I
Oh,
am.
good.
I grew up listening to her and I loved the Red album growing up.
Me too.
And now it just feels so nostalgic.
Yeah, when she did that interview on Travis's podcast, New Heights, and she said that her favorite re-release of the re-records that she did was Red. It made me so happy because that was also my favorite re-release that she did. Yes. Okay,
Crazy.
So what is your favorite Taylor Swift song?
Ooh, All Too Well 10-minute version.
Yeah.
What about you?
Absolutely. Okay. So this is, of course, hard for me. My kids will sometimes ask me, like, which is your favorite? And I'm like, wow. I mean, how do I narrow something like that down? But of course, All Too Well. I also am a big fan of Almost Do.
That would be my second favorite.
Okay.
So good.
I love Almost Do. I was already a big Taylor Swift fan, but for me, favorite albums like Folklore, Evermore, which I see as sister albums. I feel like this is one continuous train of thought.
Yeah.
Folklore and Evermore were like fantastic. I think her peak, the best albums she ever did. And Last Great American Dynasty, the song. And so just so you guys listening, if you are not a Swiftie, if you've never heard any of her music and you think she only writes songs about boys, I mean, that may be true. But also, she is such a great writer that she has this song on Last Great American Dynasty. And by the way, because I have children in my car, I only ever listen to the clean version. Okay. Yeah. So there's not cursing on the ones that I listen to. So if you go play it and you do like the non-clean version, just know that I warned you. But on the clean version of Last Great American Dynasty, she literally writes a song about her house. And it doesn't sound like me just saying that to you. You'd be like, okay, but if you go play that song, Haley, we should link it in the show notes.
Ooh, okay. We can
link
do that.
The clean version. Okay. Last Great American Dynasty. She writes a song about her house, about like the story of the person who owned the house before her and how she kind of continues on in this legacy of the person that owned the house. And it is one of my favorite. It is my absolute favorite because it showcases her as a writer. And then what's the one? It's on Folklore. I don't know why my brain is blanking. It's about crying, about tears. Help me. You wear the same jewels that I gave you as you bury me.
Oh, I could not tell you the name of the song, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, hold on. I need to pull it up for the people listening so that they know. My Tears Ricochet.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, My Tears Ricochet, another just incredible song. Okay, again, clean version.
Yeah.
clean version, Christians, before you start sending Haley messages saying, why am I recommending these songs? Okay, My Tears Ricochet, that song. So I want you to play it. And it sounds like she's writing this song about her love life, but it's really to her former record label. And so it's just
I didn't know that.
Haley, now you must replay it.
I must, yes.
And they sold her masters. That's why she says, like, you're wearing the same jewels I gave you as you try to bury me. She's saying, like, I made you all your money. And now you're going to try to bury me. And then she says, but look at how my tears ricochet. You're going to get hurt just like I'm getting hurt. It is her writing is just so, so good.
Yeah, she's very talented.
She's very talented. She's not just another pop star. Okay. She's the most streamed artist ever on Spotify with over 107 billion with a B.
Wow.
Plays. Only 1 million of those are mine. Her Eras tour was the highest grossing concert tour in history. Over $2 billion she made on that tour. And her concert film smashed the box office records too. She's won 14 Grammys. She's got an album of the year 4 times. She is the only artist to ever do that.
That's so crazy. And it's perfect because, Heather, we are talking about leadership today. And Taylor Swift is definitely a leader in her industry.
1,000. I was going to almost say 100. And I was like, no, we're going to up it to 1,000%. So on that podcast that she did with Travis, she said this, she gave this leadership quote. And it was just like her own philosophy of how she runs her company and how she runs her team. But to me, it was really interesting because she said, if the second you yell or start screaming or just lose it, you've also lost your leadership. She said, in that moment, when you lose it, you've lost your leadership. And I thought that was super interesting and such a good take on how leaders have to set the pace. You have to be the person you drive the ship. And if you're losing it, that's not helpful for the people that are supposed to be following you.
Yeah, that's so true. I'm so excited about our guest today, who I know would love that quote.
Totally.
We are bringing on Tony Miltenberger to talk about leading from our wounds.
I am a big fan. I'm like a fan favorite of Tony Miltenberger. So I first met him going on his podcast, I think with What If I'm Wrong? And I was just really, I always say this to people, and part of it is because maybe this is like a bias because I feel like Haley and I have such a good show. I really do. I listen to other people's podcasts. I go on, you guys don't even know on how many podcast interviews I go on a week. Yeah. Several. And so I watch other people do this. And I have been I think you and I have a great show. Every time I even play it back, I usually will send Haley a text that's like,
yeah, you do.
Why do we not have 1 million downloads? Because we have such a good show. There is a little bit of something for, you know what? You should pause this episode and send it to a friend. Help us get to 1 million downloads. That's what I want you to do. But when I went on Tony's show, I was just like, wow, he's in his lane. Like, you are so good at this. He is such a good host. And I always think it's just nice to be on an interview with somebody that genuinely wants to listen and be on that interview. Because sometimes you go on interviews with other people and I don't know, they're like just kind of reading the question and not looking at, they're not even paying attention to your answer. And it's really hard as a guest.
Right.
Because you're like, where do I look? You're not even looking at me. What do I, it's just so weird. So I'm so happy to have Tony on. I'm sure he's going to be an incredible guest because he's an incredible host. But first, let's jump into the group chat. Remember, if you want to send your submission to the group chat, send it to Haley at whatifimwrongpod@gmail.com. You can send her a voice memo or a written submission. These submissions are where we look at any real life relational dynamics you may need help with. And so you just kind of want to process it through the group chat. So here, are you ready? Here we go. This is my favorite part. I love listening to this part of the show too. Let's enter the group chat.
Okay, here's what we got today. It says, okay, y'all, I need the group chat wisdom. I went on a second date with this guy and everything seemed fine. We were joking, talking, eating. Honestly, I thought it was going well. I ordered fries with my meal and of course I shared a few with him. No big deal. Later that night, I get a Venmo notification, and it's him requesting me for half the fries I ordered. Like, literally a couple dollars. I don't even care about the money. It just felt so weird and petty. Am I being dramatic, or is that kind of move a big red flag in dating right now?
Okay, I'm really curious, Haley, as a dater.
Yeah.
What you would do if that happened to you. But I just want to say, my opinion, friend, no, you're not being dramatic. That's weird. I think that's weird. A Venmo request, I mean, unless you like say it at the table or something, then maybe it's not so, oh, hey, we're going to split this or whatever.
Right.
That's not so weird.
That's different.
But a Venmo request, I think like what, an hour later or something?
You're like after the fact.
He's really been pining, like sitting there, like, is she going to offer or do I have to request it? He's probably submitting something to like, I don't know, Joe Rogan's podcast right now saying like, hey, so I went on this date with this girl and she didn't offer. Was that rude of her? I sent her a request and she's not returning my phone calls. Yeah, listen, for me, it's not just about the money. It's about the message, right? Fries aren't just food. It's like, hey, we are out together. Let's have that conversation, I guess, before we go out or while we're at the table. I just think running the math on the fries is a little weird later.
Yeah.
I think it's appropriate at the moment, but I don't think it's about $2. It's about, like how somebody views generosity or partnership or give and take of a relationship. Dating is the time people show you their like natural reflexes under pressure. And if his reflex is to nickel and dime you over fries, imagine what bigger decisions could look like down the road. I don't know if it's petty. I just think it's very revealing of that person's personality type. It's a small moment that signals a bigger mindset, right? Red flag, maybe, but at the very least, I definitely think it's like a caution, like, oh, this is how this person thinks. Because if it's me, like I'm very bad with money, so that could be part of it too. But like, I will pay for anybody and everybody.
Yeah.
Anybody. Like, I'm happy to, I would never even think to do that. But my sister on the other hand, and my sister is like much better with money. Yeah. Also richer than me. She would probably absolutely send me a Venmo request for a basket of fries and be like, well, we shared them. You ate some, so pay me back. I don't know. What do you think, Haley?
It's so funny because when I first read this submission, I wasn't thinking, like, I was like, oh, yeah, like, everything that you said, totally agree. It's not about the money. Like, it's more so about the message it sends. But then as we were sitting here, I just remembered I had this guy, and it's different, but I had this guy that I went on a date with.
Haley, did you write the submission?
Yeah, I submitted this.
So I have a friend who wrote our submission.
A friend, yeah. No, but I did go on a date with this guy, and we went to this, like, pizza place. And he was like, do you want to, like, share? Do you want to get our own? And I was like, oh, like, we both ended up just, like, kind of wanting different ones. So I was like, we'll just get our own. And he was like, oh, yeah, and then we could try each other's. And I was like, sure. But I didn't really want what he had.
Right.
And so then we're sitting and we're eating. And I kept offering, like, hey, do you want to have, like, a piece of the pizza? And he kept saying, no, I'll wait till you're done. And granted, he paid for the date.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, I, like, didn't eat all the pizza, and I was like, oh, yeah, like, do you want a piece now? Like, I'm good. And he goes, well, this shall make a good lunch for tomorrow, and takes the whole pizza, or, like, the rest of it, and takes it home with him. And I was, like, I was shocked. But also, like, he did pay for it.
Right.
You know? I don't know. That's what this made me think of, was that story.
And I really do think it just comes down to how people view money. And it's, I don't want to make anybody feel bad. Because I'm sure there's somebody listening who's like my sister. Because I was just thinking about my sister, and she would probably take it home too and be like, well, I bought it.
Right.
She thinks, and she's not being rude. She, in her brain, that's just like, this is what makes sense. And in my brain, like, I would never do that.
Right. Totally.
So, and this is why, we keep asking you guys to send us your submissions, but we are totally unhelpful because usually It could go, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. It could go either way. But either way, if you have a submission you want to send to the group chat, you can send it to Haley at whatifimwrongpod@gmail.com. You can also send her a DM on Instagram. What's your handle, Haley?
Haley Hoskins.
Haley Hoskins, HALEYHOSKINS. Thanks for entering the group chat with us. I can't wait to sit down with Tony, but before we do that, let's define the term. This is the part of the show where I share with you a word, and we look at the dictionary definition of that word. And then we look at how our relationship to that word may change now that we understand what the dictionary definition of the word is. Today's term is leadership. When we hear the word leadership, we often picture someone standing at the front of a room, giving orders or making big decisions. But leadership isn't just about position. It's about posture. The dictionary defines leadership as the action of leading a group of people or an organization. Notice that it's an action, not a title. In scripture, leadership is often flipped upside down from what culture expects. Jesus says in Matthew 20:26, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. That means true leadership looks less like climbing a ladder and more like stooping down to wash feet. Leadership is influence, yes, but it's also responsibility. It's the courage to go first, the humility to listen, and the willingness to sacrifice. Some of the best leaders you'll meet aren't loud or flashy. They are the ones creating space for others to flourish. So maybe leadership is less about having followers and more about helping people find their way, less about telling people what to do, and more about showing them who they are. Leadership, it's not just about standing in front. It's also about walking alongside.
Yeah, real influence isn't just about like spotlight moments. It's about everyday choices to serve and encourage and just like make space for others to grow. And I think the best leaders that I've seen aren't the one on the stage acting like they have it all together, but the ones who are growing through failure and will admit fault and just keep serving, because I think at the end of the day, leadership is serving.
Yeah, and we have, like, you guys, I can't say it enough. We have the best guests to come on and talk to us about, actually, he's talking about leading from wounds. So I cannot wait for you guys to meet Tony Miltenberger. Okay, so we are going to be in leadership, doing leadership submissions this entire month, right, Haley? And so I thought, who better? So I got to go on Tony Miltenberger's podcast. Tony, is it Grow to Lead?
Follow to lead.
Follow to lead. Fantastic.
Yep.
And he blew me away, right? Because I was telling Tony sometimes, and you know this, like we do podcast interviews. Obviously you host a podcast. We both go on podcast interviews, and it is not everyone's gifting. And for Tony, it is absolutely his gifting. I was blown away. I just loved every second of being on his show. And
You're
so
far
I was
too kind. You made it so easy. And it was such
so
a good
fun.
episode.
It was. And so
Such
anyway,
a good episode.
I was like, Tony, you've got to come on my podcast. So here he is. He does tons of coaching and leadership training. And he has a book, you guys, that's releasing this month. I was just telling him before we started recording, it's called Wisdom in the Wound, How God Uses Your Past to Shape Who You Are Becoming. Tony, the title.
It's fire.
That's a fire title. Wisdom in the Wound.
Thank God for good publishers.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really all about this idea that it's from the epistemic consequence of sin, right? So we theologically understand that we're all broken, but we don't ever talk about the consequences of that. And so I kind of make the argument in the book is that somewhere between the ages of 4 and 12, we all experience little t trauma, right? So trauma that's not malicious intent. It's just like, hey, it's the way that you see the world. And then that becomes a lens. And so in leadership, we have to deal with that lens every single day. And so there's a tool that I kind of give in the book called the emotional intensity scale. And on a scale from 1 to 10, anytime your emotional intensity spikes above a 6, it's always more about you than it is the other person.
Wow.
And now here's the crazy part. You ready? Is that the crazy part is that emotion can be good or bad. So like I have a linebacker son. If he takes a pick six and takes it to the house, and I go full blown Midwestern dad, and I'm high fiving people and I'm chest bumping strangers on the sideline, then there's a good chance that that's actually bumping up against my own wound, rather than just the pure joy of the moment. Right. So our emotional intensity is a direct proportionate response to what's happening inside of us.
Oh my goodness. There are so many things going. First of all, what did you say? Between 4 and 12, my core wound happened at 12 years old. What's yours?
Mine is my desire to be seen. My parents had unplanned twins when I was 4 years old. And so the narrative in my head, which is it's not an accurate narrative of my parents' heart, to be clear.
Sure.
Is that the narrative in my head is that at 4 years old, I didn't really matter anymore. And so then at 8 years old, my parents get divorced. That only reinforces the narrative in my head. My dad gets remarried. My mom gets remarried. And now all of a sudden I feel like I'm basically, air quotes, living on my own from 8 years old on. And so the wound is that I really want to be seen.
Yeah.
Now here's what's crazy, right? Because this is the other part of the story, is that on the other side of your wound, God redeems it and is your greatest gift. And so what's my unique gift in this? I have the ability to see people in a deep personal way.
Yes. I'm already like wanting to cry because mine is I was expelled from school in 8th grade. And so it goes back to my parents. I was expelled from in a very small town, a very small Christian school. And so I just always felt like I was never going to be good enough. And I felt like I was an embarrassment. And so I'm thinking through, how has that impacted the way I lead?
And what's crazy is that people bump up against our wounds all the time. So that when somebody says something about your intelligence or whether or not you're good enough or you feel disrespected, then that can instantly bump up against that wound and cause us to have an emotional response, right? Well,
oh my goodness.
What I'm learning is that the wisest leaders in the world, they don't have a lack of emotion, but rather they have such an intimacy with their wound that it doesn't scare them anymore.
I am 1000% reading this book.
Well, thank
you. Wisdom in the wound. I'm not kidding. Do you do coaching? Do you do one-on-one coaching?
I do. So this is coming out of my executive coaching, right? I was in the pastorate for a long time, and
that's
then
the Lord I knew.
He just kept putting people in front of me, and what happened was I realized that there were patterns. There were pattern shaping. I'm sure you see this all the time in your work too, Heather. Like there's patterns, and here's why there are patterns, right? Because it's a consequence of sin, and the enemy is not a creator. So there's nothing new here, right? And so then once you kind of get an idea of the landscape, the nuances, the stories, the evidence of big T trauma like divorce or like abuse or anything like that, that's like just that becomes a magnifying glass on the little T trauma. And I experienced that when I was in the Army, and then I saw it again in the pastorate, and the Lord just kind of opened up this pathway to executive coaching, because once leaders become aware of who they are, they can begin to see the people they're leading in a way that is a little bit more intentional rather than reactionary. Right. And so I always say that emotions are decision points. They're not decision makers. And they only exist for one reason. And that reason is to be felt. But yet we often don't create safe systems in our life to feel our emotions. So when somebody bumps up against our wound, we don't know what to do. So we react, right? And all of a sudden I'm going to scream, I'm going to yell, I'm going to tell you you're number one in inappropriate ways, right? Like all of those kind of things. I have an reaction, an emotional reaction instead of an intentional emotional reaction. So like one of the things that I do with leaders all the time is we start talking about your daily disciplines. We were talking about your 5-mile run before we got on the podcast. That's a discipline that gives you the freedom to respond healthy emotionally. So it is, right? And so
why I run.
That's it. I work out so that I can be a better dad
Yep.
and a better leader and a better husband, not so that I am responsive to my emotional bumps, right? Because the bumps are going to come. There's no way to stop it, right? Like it's Jesus and I always think about Jesus and Lazarus when he cried knowing he was going to bring him back from the dead, because emotions were just meant to be felt.
Okay, Haley, read to us our submission. Yes, I absolutely love this. Let's hear from Tony what he has to say.
Okay. I used to think being a leader meant being the one who always knew what to do. At work, I prided myself on having the answers in meetings, stepping in when others hesitated, and always looking composed, even when I wasn't. But then something shifted. A newer team member asked me, "How do you decide what to prioritize when everything feels urgent?" And I didn't have a good answer. Instead of faking it, I admitted, "I'm not sure. I've been figuring that out myself." What followed was an honest conversation where we both learned something, and I noticed they seemed more confident afterward, not less. That moment stuck with me. So now I'm wondering, what if leadership isn't always about having the answers, but about creating space for others to grow by not pretending you do?
What do you think about that, Tony?
I completely agree. Right. I think one of the most underrated parts of leadership, it's we've attributed leadership to direction instead of influence. And I would suggest that leadership is really all about our ability to influence and influencing others. The best way to do that, if we just go back to scripture, the best way to do that we would see is through asking questions, right? When Jesus asked the disciples, "Who do you say I am?" Who do they say I am? Okay, great. Don't tell anybody about this. He never definitively really answers the question. And so, one of the things that we talk about in coaching all the time, and I'm sure you feel the same way in your communications work, is that the ability to ask good question unlocks a potential inside of someone else that is much greater than if you give them the answer.
That's so good.
And I think authenticity is the commodity that's needed most, right? So, I'm a content creator. Heather, I know you are as well. And so there's tons of content in the world, but what is lacking now is community. Yeah. And so instead of building more content as leadership, we need to build more community. I'm rereading right now with our church staff the Culture Code by Daniel Coyle. And, one of the things they talk about is this idea about what brings you into the circle. What are the truths? What are the beliefs? What are the safety things? What are the micro tells that tell people you're actually a part of this? And that's what people want. They want to be a part of something instead of just task oriented. So I think that your listener is spot on. And I would just encourage them to just keep leaning into authenticity. And I had a great leader in the Army who one of his rules was to always be the last person to talk in a room, because he knew once he gave his opinion,
changes
it changes the whole tenor of the room. It stymies the ability for anyone else to be creative.
Haley, let's try to do. Let's do. What's that called? Not machine gun. What's it called?
Rapid fire.
Lightning. Rapid fire. Lightning round. Okay. We have ready. A few short ones.
Okay, let's do it.
And we have like a couple minutes.
I'm going to give them real quick. I'm going to give them real quick answers.
Okay. Could I be wrong in thinking that leaders need to stay emotionally detached to make good decisions?
I would say that you are wrong. You need to be incredibly intentional with your emotions. John Tyson says spirit-led, data-informed. And I believe that's true emotionally too. Be emotionally informed and data-informed and in the middle. But if you take out emotion, then you're taking out everything that makes you human.
That's good.
Yeah.
Haley, next one. Rapid fire, Haley.
Okay. Here we go. Is it possible I've misunderstood leadership as pushing for performance when it might actually be more about creating psychological safety?
It depends on what you're leading people towards.
Okay.
So I would say that in the event, if you have a task-oriented leadership goal, then and it's brief, then psychological safety may be less important than the task. However, 90% of the time, psychological safety is critical to get people to buy in to completion of the task. All right. It's that old adage, people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And another way to say that is people don't care how much you know until they feel safe around you.
Yeah. What if I've been assuming leadership is about seniority when really it's something anyone can practice at any level?
Agreed. Leadership is just about influence. And if you want to empower the next generation, Kara Powell says this from the Fuller Youth Institute. She says, give them the keys. Right. And so if you want to be a really elite level leader, give the next generation keys and give them permission to lead you.
Okay, last one. Am I getting it wrong by believing that showing vulnerability makes me a weak leader?
Yes. Yes, it's not weak. It's so much strength, right? Nobody ever walks alongside somebody who is vulnerable and says, man, I wish you weren't so vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? What they say is, I see you. I respect it. Now, here's the thing. There's a difference between vulnerability and instability.
Yes.
You can be vulnerable and still be stable. And this is this idea about leaning into the idea of the wound, is that you don't want to be a leader that is emotionally unstable. You can be emotional. Martin Luther King, one of the most emotional leaders in all of history, passionate, used his words so carefully, so pointedly, used his emotion like an incredible tool to get people to believe in what he was saying, but very stable, not emotionally unstable. If you think about some of our current politicians, they feel a little bit more emotionally unstable. And as a result, nobody wants to follow them.
That is so good. I cannot wait to read Wisdom in the Wound. It's out this month. What's the date? What's the release date?
September 23rd.
Okay, guys. So you have like 22 more days, but you should sign up for the pre-order. Is there anything that your publisher is giving for people who pre-order?
Yes, I think we're going to provide the foreword, which was written by my dear friend Kristen LaValle in chapter 1. Plus, we're going to have some ideas to kind of, if you go to wisdominthewoundbook.com, we're going to have a quiz up to help you identify what your wound is, because a lot of us struggle to see that.
Yes, and I think it's really important that people identify it, because it probably is changing the way you are interacting and leading with people. So please find his resources, Tony Miltenberger, and he also has Follow to Lead podcast. Massive fan of him. Tony, thank you so much for joining us.
June 10th. Go back and listen to June 10th.
Yeah.
Any Day was on there. Let's go. It was a fire episode.
Full circle, friends. Full circle. Thanks so much for joining us. I want to close every episode with a segment I call Day in the Bible. And this is where I share something I have learned in Bible study with you that will beg the question, what if I'm wrong about how I have been reading or thinking or explaining this Bible passage? Today, I wanted to look at leadership. And when we think of leadership in the Bible, our minds often go to kings or prophets or apostles. But one of the clearest pictures of leadership shows up in John chapter 13. The disciples are gathered for a meal, and what does Jesus do? He gets up, takes off his outer garment, and begins to wash their feet. That was the work of a servant, not a leader. And yet Jesus tells them in verse 15, I have set for you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Leadership in Jesus' model isn't about climbing higher. It's about bending lower. The world teaches us that leaders take charge. Jesus teaches us that leaders take responsibility. The world says leaders deserve honor. Jesus says leaders give honor. So here's the question I just want you to think about as we close out the show today. In your influence, in your area, with whatever is in your hand, whether that's at work or at home or in your friendships, are you reaching for the towel or the throne? Because Jesus makes it clear the greatest leaders are the ones who serve. I cannot say this enough, especially just with where things are in our Christian culture and our business culture and our political culture. Leadership is not about power. It's about presence, not about being first, but about putting others first. That's it for today's episode. Join us next week as we continue on in our theme of leadership.
Next week, we are asking the question, can leaders change their minds? You can send me your submission if you want us to discuss whatever experience you were questioning on the podcast. Email me at whatifimwrongpod@gmail.com.
I'm Heather Thompson Day, and I'll see you next week.